Well, I just got back from Max Yasgur's farm in Bethel, New York, where Woodstock was. I was invited by a couple of friends, and I have never seen so many people in my entire life just enjoying music together. It was so peaceful, and the music was so beautiful, and there was so much love in the air. You could almost say it was 3 days of just peace, love, and music. How much longer do we have to listen to stuff about Woodstock? I'm tired of it. That was like 30 years ago. Whatever, Woodstock was just like 3 days of like hippies just being completely zoned out together. Well, frankly, I'm much more interested in talking about Lollapalooza. I just got back from that concert. Well, you don't even know what you're talking about. Lollapalooza, I've never heard of that. I mean, I always want to have faith in up-and-coming music festivals, but you didn't go to Woodstock. You have no idea how amazing that event was. Maybe I just need to educate you a little bit on what Woodstock really was. Woodstock, the be-all, end-all of music festivals. The granddaddy of all music festivals. 3 days of peace, love, and music. An event whose poster has been reprinted on hundreds of millions of t-shirts, and the poster has been hung on every wall of every college dorm room. The great event that every generation after the boomers feels as though they really missed out on. Woodstock's legacy at this point has almost become mythic in its stature, similar to a lot of other great events and artists and so forth of the 1960s. Held from August 15th to August 18th of 1969, it's honestly hard to believe that an event of this size only took place over the course of 3 days. Billed as an Aquarian exposition, 3 days of peace, love, and music, the concert was held on Max Yasgur's farm in Bethel, New York, and it attracted over 400,000 people. Despite numerous logistical issues and pretty much everyone outside of the counterculture plotting for its downfall, Woodstock ended up becoming a symbol of the 1960s. Woodstock wasn't just a concert, it was a statement. With performances like Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, and The Who, Woodstock captured the spirit of a generation that was yearning for peace during a time of much social upheaval. It was a momentous occasion that proved that hundreds of thousands of people could be in the same place at one time, that they could be in harmony under good circumstances, and just get together and listen to some good music. Woodstock was organized primarily by Michael Lang. Michael Lang had co-organized the Miami Pop Festival in 1967. Lang organized Woodstock with Artie Kornfeld, Joel Rosenman, and John P. Roberts. Woodstock was originally conceived to be a counterculture musical festival that would have artists such as Bob Dylan and the band. From the beginning, though, Woodstock seemed to be ill-fated. They were having trouble finding a venue in upstate New York, and many of the residents in the area were strongly opposed to having a concert of this size, particularly because it was meant to support the counterculture of the time. Basically, they didn't want those hippie values anywhere near them. Originally, tickets for Woodstock cost $18 ahead of time and $24 at the gate, which would be about approximately $150 and $200 in 2024, which is still an incredible price by today's standards. And by the time the concert actually started, people kind of just started getting in for free, partly because there were so many people, and also because the founders of Woodstock decided to not put a ticket booth in last minute. Over and over again, Lang and his fellow organizers had told the residents of Bethel, New York, that the concert would maybe attract about 50,000 people at most. By the early hours of the first day of the festival, however, that 50,000 had already shown up, and there were thousands more waiting behind them. At its peak, it's estimated that Woodstock attracted around 450,000 people. Just to emphasize that number, really just to emphasize it, that is nearly 500,000 people. That is outrageous. To this day, the largest ticketed event ever attracted only 220,000 people. Taylor Swift, for example, who is one of the biggest touring artists in the world right now, attracts just under 100,000 concert goers per show. In other words, 450,000 in one farm in Bethel, New York, where they were expecting only maybe 50,000 at most, is a lot of people. Although Woodstock, even to this day, is sort of marketed as like a totally peaceful festival, peace, love, and music and all of that, the Overcrowding and sheer number of people that ended up attending Woodstock did not come without its problems. The event runners for Woodstock were just simply not prepared for the amount of people that showed up, and this led to problems with poor sanitation. This also led to problems with not having enough food on the grounds, as well as the grounds being muddy and wet from recent rain, which wasn't really their fault, but when you have 400,000 more people than you were expecting to in one place that's muddy and rainy, it kind of becomes a problem. In fact, there could have been thousands more who attended the event, but descriptions of traffic jams heading up to the venue actually discouraged a lot of people from attending. There were also 3 recorded fatalities at the concert. 2, unfortunately, from drug overdoses, and another from a 17-year-old being run over by a tractor because he was sleeping in some hay. Yikes. In addition to these fatalities, there were also 742 drug overdoses over the 3-day weekend. Despite all of this, though, the concert actually went over remarkably well. At one point during the concert, Max Yasgur climbed the stage, and he spoke into the microphone to the hundreds of thousands of teenagers and young adults in that crowd and told them how proud he was of them.
But above that, the important thing that you've proven to the world is that 500,000 kids, and I call you kids because I have children older than you are, 500,000 young people can get together and have 3 days of fun and music, and have nothing but fun and music, and I God bless you for it.
Truly, Woodstock seemed to be a look into the future that the counterculture of the 1960s dreamed for. Finally, their naive dream had solid proof that it could work. Woodstock's impact on culture was immediate and enduring. It absolutely defined the festival experience, influencing countless music festivals that came after it. And of course, the imagery and ideals of Woodstock have been romanticized in music, books, and TV, but it also played a significant role in the careers of many artists such as Janis Joplin, Canned Heat, John Sebastian, Richie Havens, and more. Woodstock set the precedent for large-scale music festivals. In fact, its legacy is seen today in the way that modern music festivals prioritize the communal experience and social messages. Few festivals rival the impact and significance of Woodstock, except one. Okay, now it's my turn to talk about my generation's greatest music festival, Lollapalooza. I have always thought of the 1990s as sort of being this pessimistic, tired child of the 1960s. A lot of the fashion of the 1990s was influenced by the 1960s. A lot of the most famous musicians of the 1990s, such as Kurt Cobain of Nirvana, were heavily inspired by music of the 60s and 70s. However, the youth culture of the 1990s is pretty starkly dark compared to that of the 1960s. Faced with the fact that the 1960s optimism didn't really pan out the way they all hoped it would, and with the fact that many of the problems of the 1960s had been dealt with but not really properly handled or taken care of, coupled with the increasing awareness of a digital age and being more and more plugged in, the 1990s was a decade in which the youth didn't really have time for any of that phony Beatlemania of the 1960s. So we talked about Woodstock, now let's talk about Lollapalooza. Lollapalooza was created by Perry Farrell of Jane's Addiction, and it was sort of like a farewell tour for the band. However, it quickly evolved into a traveling music festival, and this festival celebrated alternative music, punk music, hip-hop, and more, which sort of differentiated it from festivals of the past. Something that also differentiated Lollapalooza from other music festivals prior and of the time was the fact that it was not just simply a music festival. This event included sideshow acts, performing monks, tents with information on political activities and awareness. As mentioned before, Lollapalooza also brought together a diverse array of musical artists, combining acts like Pearl Jam and Ice-T. This broke musical barriers and also embraced the eclectic spirit of Gen X. Alternative music of all types was exploding at the time, and Lollapalooza seemed to tap right into the youth culture. As Spin magazine said, Lolla became the template for what became the modern American music festival. However, as the 1990s progressed, Lolla didn't exactly move smoothly with the times. As time went on and Lollapalooza continued touring, The showrunner started booking more and more mainstream acts, which many original concert goers felt as sort of wrong. The original Lollapalooza had included a lot of alternative and underground acts, and many people felt that that was what the true spirit of Lollapalooza was. In 1996, when Metallica was booked as the headliner of Lollapalooza, Perry Farrell dropped out of the show altogether. He stated that Metallica's super macho image was completely against everything that he had dreamed of for Lollapalooza, and against the ideals of the early 1990s alternative music scene. This, combined with high ticket prices and high food prices, were beginning to turn concertgoers away. By 1997, a mere 6 years after Lollapalooza began, the festival was all but defunct. Efforts have been made over the years to revive Lollapalooza and bring it back to its original glory. But after years of low turnout and increasing ticket prices, it doesn't really seem that Lollapalooza will ever really be what it was in that first run in the early 1990s. Despite this, Lollapalooza's impact on culture is still profound. It brought alternative music to the forefront and created a space for emerging artists to perform, which is why it was such a letdown when later iterations of the festival started bringing in more and more mainstream artists. As mentioned before, the festival also became well known for its activism, with booths for various social and political causes. So, how do Woodstock and Lollapalooza compare? How do Woodstock and Lollapalooza compare from a modern standpoint? As mentioned before, Woodstock symbolizes the idealism of the 1960s. It's like a snapshot of a generation's hopes and dreams. Woodstock's spontaneous, chaotic nature sort of contrasts with the commercial and organized aspects of Lollapalooza. Another important thing to note is that Woodstock was a one-off event. Unlike Lollapalooza, which went on to be a tour and went on to last for years and years, Woodstock sort of has the benefit of being stuck in a moment in time. Looking back, we're able to romanticize Woodstock the way that we are because there was only really one Woodstock. And no, we are not going to talk about Woodstock 99. It's interesting to note that Woodstock took place only a week after the infamous Tate LaBianca murders in August of 1969. This is the event that many consider to have effectively ended the 1960s. The fact that an event like Woodstock could still happen even after something so awful is honestly incredible. Despite the increasing paranoia and skepticism that was rushing through the United States, an event like Woodstock could still happen. It's a testament to the festival's lasting appeal. To this day, when people think of a modern music festival or the main modern music festival, they tend to think of Woodstock. On the other hand, Lollapalooza represents the 1990s and the rise of alternative music. It is more curated and sculpted than Woodstock, and it adapted over the years to try and stay relevant, whether or not those efforts proved fruitful, as discussed earlier. Lollapalooza, too, does sort of exist in a sort of 1990s bubble in the way that Woodstock does for the 1960s, but not in the same way. Honestly, Lollapalooza becoming a touring event and a festival that lasted for years and years might have been a bad decision. It's easier to romanticize the original Lolla tour, which took place in the early 1990s. However, it's difficult to wrap the same blanket of mysticism around Lollapalooza that we do around Woodstock. At the end of the day, in their own ways, both Woodstock and Lollapalooza have left an indelible mark on music and culture as a whole. That is just undeniable. Woodstock's legacy lives on with its mythical status in popular culture. Lollapalooza, meanwhile, continues to evolve, showcasing new music and remaining a vital part of the music festival scene. In the end, of course, both festivals remind us of the power of bringing people together through music. They hold a special place in history, influencing not just the music, but social movements and the culture as well. All right, thank you guys so much for watching. We really appreciate it over here. This is episode 4 of our series, The Rock Block, talking about all things of popular pop culture and music in the 20th century. Really hope that you enjoyed this one. Please like this video, subscribe to Odd Quartet. We are going to be coming out with one more video in this series, and I really hope that you guys come and watch it, and make sure to share with your friends. Thanks, bye-bye. Nice, sorry, okay. All right, sorry, one more time. I hope that this makes sense the way I want it to in my head. All right, let's do this. I've been recording for too long. We did it.